as I always am on Monday, by Adam Scherer. Adam, how you doing? How was the weekend?
Doing good. Weekend was fun. I had a pretty decent weekend DFS wise throughout the first pitch Do's game. Had a really just fun Friday experience at that. So, yeah, I had a good weekend. How was yours?
Yeah, excuse me. I meant to say the newest Baltimore Orioles reliever, Adam Scherer. That was a pretty good looking pitch. He kind of lit up Twitter, it looked like. So, were you happy with your result of the pitch there?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't warmed up at all. I'd had like 6 or 7 beers beforehand, and I hadn't thrown a baseball in probably 6 years. So, all things considered, I was pretty happy with it.
No, it was good. Yeah, it looked like you were a natural, and you just went out there all business. The video's on Twitter, on Adam's Twitter, if you guys want to see that. I think you're just is it Chip My Money DFS?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's his Twitter handle. If you want to go check that out, look at his replies. You probably saw that though if you're active on Twitter, on DFS Twitter. But yeah, man, it was good. So no more excuses for being nervous now. You were telling Josh you were a little nervous leading up to it.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little bit nervous before, but it was nice. Because we actually were down on the field for like batting practice. I met Armstrong, who was the reliever that caught my first pitch. So I met him beforehand. Then we went up to the suite, had a bunch of beer, came back down, talked to him again for a couple of minutes. So like that helped calm the nerves a little
Right.
bit. I think I would have been more nervous for sure, like obviously without the beer, but also if it had just been like walking out and throwing to like an Orioles player that I hadn't talked to for like 20 minutes already.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. And they didn't let you throw from the mound, right?
Yeah, no, they said I had to throw from in front of it, so I threw from as close to it as I could. There was some like soccer star that threw out a first pitch like after me, and he was like halfway to the plate, so I at least felt a little bit better.
Yeah, it was good. Looked like it went according to plan. Um, all right, really quick. Yahoo runs this no management fee tournament, as we talk about all the time. Right now, about 300 spots, just under 300 spots left over in this tournament. $3 entry fee. You can max it with 10 lineups. No CSV added. Not a lot of sharks. You're not going to see a lot of the Awesomes and all these other big names that we always talk about on some other sites. It's just a little bit easier competition. They also have a 33% payout tournament. So if you're looking to more cash, you want to take on less risk. There's pretty good options over on Yahoo. They also have a $15 tournament with $1,500 to first. So go over and look at Yahoo if you want more details on how to get $30 of Yahoo Sports rewards points. You can go into Emacs Spotlight Haters article. It's always posted up on the front page in the morning. So check that out if you would like to go over and play on Yahoo. We would suggest you do. All right, so lineup study was pretty easy to decide what we were going to talk about today. So I've got lineup study that's an FC Pro add-on if you guys want to follow along. But basically, over the last 2 days, if you pick a tournament on any of these and you click into it, you're probably going to see a familiar name up at the top. So I opened up yesterday's tournaments, and Adam actually reminded me that Alex had a pretty big Saturday as well. So we'll look at your lineups. We'll look at Alex's lineups as well. But Alex took down two of the bigger tournaments on DraftKings last night. The $10 150 max cleared that by about 6 points, and then also the double steal, the $750 nine entry max. He maxed that, of course, made almost 70K in that tournament alone. If you look over at what he did on FanDuel as well, I've got the FanDuel links opened up. Let's see here. It was the 21st. That was yesterday. Yeah, the $1,650 entry. You will see another familiar name up at the top. Awesemo, first and third, 100K to first, 10K for the third. He also did that on a couple other tournaments on FanDuel as well. So he really crushed it. What's going on, Adam? Do you see anything different that he's doing? It looks like yesterday, especially, I pulled up your exposures and his, as well as Tom's in $10. You guys had similar exposures, 90+% Snell for both of you guys. But is there anything weird you're seeing? Like, how is he doing this? He's just better than everyone.
I mean, he just runs better than me. That's all it is. But no, I mean, the one thing that stands out, I know for sure in our exposures yesterday was he had 23% Drew Smiley, and I had an upload error, so I had 0 Drew Smiley. I wasn't getting to 23% anyway, but I know I was around like 10%, I think, or intended to, and that didn't work. So that obviously was a big key for him yesterday. 23.9 points from Smiley at basically minimum price. But yeah, hitter exposures, we were on very similar guys. Looks like a lot of Boston for him, a lot of Toronto, tons of Blake Snell, a lot of James Paxton. I know his lineup yesterday. It kind of goes back to he jokes about it a lot on the Deeper Dive show about stacking everyone, but in reality, you do want to get some exposure to a lot of different stacks, even if they're not your primary ones. And he won yesterday's tournament with a Colorado Baltimore 5-3, if I remember correctly. And just looking through his exposures right now, it's not like he was really high on any of those guys. It just so happened that he got there with a lineup that he had a little, very very little bit of exposure to Colorado, and it just turned out that it was put together perfectly. But just kind of having shots at some of those really low owned teams gives you a chance to kind of salvage your day, or in this case have a great day, even when most of your highly owned guys don't do that well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his primary stack. So if you open up, if anybody's on FC Pro following along lineup study, and you open up team stack 1, so you go to his exposures, you can see all the teams he stacked, and then I'm sorted by counts. The most exposed stack he had was Toronto, who was pretty much a dud. 48 5-man stacks out of 150. So 1/3 of his lineups were basically dead. But that ranking process is so valuable to him. He's so good at deciding which lineup makes the 150 and which lineups do not. So you see Colorado, he had one 5-man Colorado stack that netted him $29,990. And that was the only Colorado 5-man he had. I think he had a couple Colorado 4-mans. So he had a few stacks sprinkled in, but it's not like he was heavy on Colorado. And who was his mini stack in that?
Baltimore. He had the Trey Mancini double dong in there.
Okay, that's what it was. So just kind of lined up with the right mini stack as well. Just insane. So he does this.
Yeah,
often.
I just feel a lot better seeing that too, because I was very similar in my Colorado exposure where I had a couple of lineups with those guys, but nothing crazy. And when I saw him at the top, I was just like, man, I really hope he didn't have, like 15% Colorado or something. And I just like missed it, but he didn't. And so that at least makes me feel better about my process. Obviously it came through for him, but we were still, not actually high on Colorado.
Yeah. And Alex, oftentimes people ask him how many teams you stack. And he says, like you said, Adam, he'd like to stack everyone in a perfect world, but you only have 150 lineups, so not everyone's going to make the cut. In this one, I counted just quickly, he had 11 teams he main stacked, so 4 or 5-man stack. That's about half of the ones that are on the slate, and that's what he usually ends up with. So if anybody's wondering that, it's usually around half the teams that are on the slate on a normal size slate, like 8+ games. But yeah, he didn't really have much Colorado. I was glad to see that as well. I was like, man, was he heavy on Colorado and I just missed something, or I updated projections wrong or something like that? But he had a ton of Toronto, even more than I did. I was getting worried with the amount of Toronto I had, but looks like he had him in 1/3 of his lineups.
Yeah, I feel really good actually after looking at his lineups compared to mine, because I obviously had not a very good slate, but I feel like if I'm playing very similar percentages of stuff to him consistently, I'm probably going to do fine.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. All right, Josh says.
He had a lot of Detroit too, which was another one of my higher owned stats.
Detroit, yeah, me too. Josh says I was the one with a ton of Colorado, which got me nowhere. So Josh just didn't get it to line up. So there were 47 people I counted in this tournament yesterday on the main slate that 150'd, so they maxed out this $10. How many of them, if you had to guess, profited?
You said how many total?
There are 47. I just counted quickly.
Yeah.
7. So one of the higher numbers actually. But yeah, it's really difficult when you're 150ing these tournaments. And this one actually wasn't terribly top heavy. It was 30K to first instead of like the one tonight that's $9, 100K to first. I don't know if you saw that for DraftKings. You're playing that though, right? Like you just play
Yeah.
that regardless.
Yeah, I just max out everything like $20 and below, regardless. We talked about it in Slack. Someone asked the last time DraftKings did one of these really, really heavy ones, and my answer was kind of like, if you have the bankroll and you're gonna just max everything every night in that price range, then you shouldn't really be taking it off. But if you don't quite have the bankroll and you kind of are picking and choosing what nights to play heavier volume or something like that, then while the 100K is obviously appealing, you absolutely should not play this tournament.
Right. So I've been playing like 50 entries in this $10 along with the other lower dollar stuff. So I'll probably do that same thing again and just hope my top 50 lineups are pretty close together as far as being heavy on a couple teams, so that I'm giving myself a decent chance if one of my top stacks does indeed go off, if it's the stack that needs to be the nuts. But I'd like to 150 that. I just can't really justify that because I don't usually play that much volume in MLB at least. So yeah, man, it's going to be a weird one with this 100K to first tournament at this low price point. So yeah, like you said, that's appealing, but if you don't normally max that, I wouldn't suggest you do that today. All right, let's move on to the games here. First one on the slate, we've got Colorado and Washington, the Nationals. So just to get this out of the way, there are really major weather concerns in this one. It is the Nationals, so who knows what's going to happen here. We've got two really cheap pitchers, Peter Lambert and Erik Fetty, on the mound. Do you think this one plays, Adam? And if it does, what are you seeing as far as guys you want to play?
Yeah, I mean, the weather looks pretty dicey, like you said. So obviously, there's a lot that can change between now and lock. But if it does go, I think it's not super appealing for pitching, but Erik Fetty in particular at 4,500 on DraftKings is one of those cheap arms that I think you can get to. Like, I wouldn't even be interested at 31 on Yahoo, but 4,500 on DraftKings is just really cheap. You get Colorado outside of Coors. I think it's still pretty likely that Colorado has a decent game, but with the way you and I were talking before the show, with the way that DraftKings did their pricing on pitching today, there's a lot of really mediocre at best pitchers that are sub 5K, which kind of just makes them appealing anyway. But the good pitchers are priced, really, really sharp on the slate. So I think that rolling the dice on a variety of really cheap pitchers and pairing them with the good ones is one way you can go. And Colorado with a 4.9 implied run total, it's not low, but for baseball, in 2019 in the summer, it's not really that high either. So I could see getting to a little bit of Fetty.
Yeah, I think Fetty was the guy I had my eye on just a little bit. I'm not convinced this game is playing. Still, you got two low strikeout pitchers, but they're both super cheap, and Fetty is a favorite here. He would probably be a guy that'd be in my pool. I just have no clue whether or not this game is going to play. So, and it's the Nationals, which is another wrinkle. We've seen them cancel games when they probably shouldn't have canceled games. And with no ace on the mound tonight, they're probably more likely to pull another stunt like that. So we will see. But what about hitting here? Nationals, I'm guessing 6.2 implied total.
Yeah, definitely like the Nats. Lambert really hasn't shown a whole lot since being called up. He's kind of like a middle of the road prospect for Colorado. Maybe turns into something decent in the future, but doesn't seem like he really has it so far. Obviously it's tough to take too much away also from a handful of starts for the Rockies, since some of those were in Coors, and he hasn't had the best matchups either. But overall, he's really been hit hard by lefties. 17.8% strikeout percentage, 371 expected WOBA, 209 expected WOBA. So I think Juan Soto really stands out in the middle of this order, as does Matt Adams. But against righties, he hasn't been striking them out either. Only a 12% strikeout percentage, 320 expected WOBA, 124 expected ISO. Obviously good and much better than against lefties. But Trey Turner, Anthony Rendon, still high upside guys. But the lefties here with Soto and Adams really stand out.
Yeah, Adams was the guy I had my eye on, especially at Yahoo. He's under $10, just $9 for Adams if he bats fifth. The Nats are actually pretty cheap, so that would be a stack that I would be getting to on Yahoo quite a bit, assuming this weather is good enough to at least play the game. But keep an eye on this one. This is the one with, looks like, major weather concerns. Follow that Osmo weather account if you want to see Alex's take and see how the weather at the game is affecting his process. Anything else? You want to move it on?
No, that's it.
All right, cool. Cardinals and Pirates, we've got Daniel Ponce de Leon going up against Trevor Williams. Ponce de Leon and the Cardinals, 5.1 implied total, 5 flat for the Pirates. Ponce de Leon is 9K on DraftKings, and Trevor Williams is 6,500. Tough strikeout matchup here for Ponce de Leon. I don't know that this is going to be a guy I'm getting to, but am I missing something here, Adam?
No, I don't think I'll get there either. It is a tough strikeout matchup, like you said. Also, just a productive offense for Pittsburgh. It is a favorable park for pitchers. It's not 95 degrees anymore, so that's appealing as well. Yeah, I mean, with how sharp pitcher pricing is, it's not the craziest idea, I guess. And on Yahoo, I think Ponce de Leon is more affordable at $34. He's also only 6,700 on FanDuel. So on sites that are not DraftKings, it's easier to get to him, but still a tough strikeout matchup. I'm not convinced he's all that good either. Looking at his minor league numbers, elevated walk percentage, strikeouts are kind of come and go depending on what season you look at. So I'm not totally convinced he's great. It's a tough strikeout matchup. He has been good at limiting production so far this year, but he's just not someone that I think I'll end up getting to all that much in this matchup.
Yeah, he hasn't struggled with the walks as much this season when I opened up the game logs last night. So that's at least encouraging, but I don't know why all of a sudden that he would be better in terms of walking less guys as soon as you get to the majors. So I think that's probably just a little bit of variance there.
Yeah, I tend to throw stuff like that out. He's walked 9.5% in the majors this year, but he walked 12.2% at AAA, which is the same exact walk percentage he had at AAA last year. His strikeout percentage at AAA this year was 19.2%. It's 29.9 in the majors. Sometimes you'll see that happen because pitchers who are either really, really highly regarded prospects that are clearly going to come to the majors, or pitchers that have like Ponce de Leon, who has been to the majors, they know he'll be back. Sometimes in the minors they're working on something specific and it'll make the numbers worse, but that's not always the case. And in general, if I see someone's minor league numbers much worse than his major league numbers, I just assume that sooner or later they're going to go back to being not very good. We've talked about that a lot with someone like Jordan Yamamoto. I think that it's similar here with Ponce de Leon. His current strikeout percentage this year in the majors is higher than at any point in professional baseball for him. I don't think that's going to last.
Yeah, Ponce de Leon running good right now, it appears. So wouldn't expect those same sort of K numbers. What about Trevor Williams on the other side? 6,500. Not a price that's probably going to jump off the page for a lot of people, especially with a decent implied total against nearly 5 here for the Cardinals. It actually just bumped down a little bit. The total looks like dropped a half run since we were talking about this. But Williams, 6,500. He's got an 18% K rate this season. The Cardinals strike out around average versus righties. They've been pretty bad versus righties this season. But is Williams going to be a guy in your mix, do you think? Or are you just going down to this clear punt range in the sub 5K on DKs?
I actually do think I'll get the Sum Williams. I have him as a good point per dollar option on DraftKings. I think that there's a gap in raw point projection between him and those punt guys. Obviously, going to the cheaper guys gets you better bats, but I think there will be plenty of lineups where I get the bats that I want, and I have the money for Williams. It is a good park. The weather is favorable for pitching, now that it's back in the 70s. And Colorado or St. Louis really just has a watered down lineup right now with no Molina, no Carpenter, no Marcelo Ozuna. And Williams isn't bad at limiting production. He's not a great strikeout pitcher, but with most of the good strikeout pitchers on this slate being really expensive, getting someone who hopefully can just give you like 6 innings, strike out a handful of guys, and not give up more than a couple of runs is more appealing than it normally is. So I think I'll get the more Trevor Williams today than I normally do.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the mid tier today, it's pretty non-existent. So I think I'm probably going to get to some Trevor Williams along with a lot of these 4 to 5K punt guys. Any bats here that you want to talk about on either side?
Nothing that really stands out with the exception of Josh Bell's price tag dropping to $4,500 on DraftKings, and he's at $18 on Yahoo. Both of those are really, really appealing. It's not the greatest matchup. It's not the greatest, but getting a ton of power now at a really mid-range price tag.
Yeah, and we're gonna need some like cheaper teams today if we're gonna be paying up for some of these top end arms that are priced crazily on DraftKings, especially. All right, let's move on to the next game. Cleveland and Toronto, we've got a 5.2 implied total for the Indians, 3.9 for the Blue Jays. Mike Clevinger going up against Ryan Borucki. Clevinger, his price across the industry, 12-1 on DraftKings, 10-2 on FanDuel. He is $51 on Yahoo, probably most appealing on Yahoo. But on the other two sites, is Clevinger going to be a guy that you get to? I looked at his K rate. He leads the slate right now. I know he's had a limited season. He was hurt for a couple months there, but 41.4% K rate on the season, going up against a Blue Jays team that does strike out a little bit. Where does he kind of rank in your hierarchy of these top arms?
It's going to be tough to get there, I think, just because he is so expensive. He's really close to Garrett Cole in price tag. And while the matchup is better for strikeouts for Clevinger, Cole is, I think, the best strikeout starter in baseball. I know Clevinger's numbers are a little bit better this year, but like you said, limited sample for him. Cole's at 37.5%, and he's made every start this season. So I do really like Clevinger. I think a lot will come down to ownership. If Cole were to get tons of ownership, I could see pivoting to Clevinger. But more often than not, where I'm paying all the way up, I will probably just go to Cole.
That's fair. Yeah, similarly priced on DraftKings, $400 difference. Cole's a little bit bigger of a favorite, and Cole's at home. I don't know. I mean, not too, like, the matchups aren't that different. Oakland, a worse strikeout matchup, but if you think Cole's the better K pitcher, then the extra $400 isn't going to be that big of a deal. So, yeah, I think he's going to rank behind Garrett Cole for me as well, but I was just surprised to see how many guys he's striking out. In his 7 starts, 3 of those have been 10K plus starts. He's got two outings with 12Ks on the season, so they've come in bunches. He's got a negative 11 DK point performance mixed in there. So he's kind of been all over the map, but just getting tons of strikeouts almost every start. Borucki at 7,600. Just what I was talking about with this mid-tier, it's kind of non-existent. Is he someone you would look to at all at 7,600 on DK?
No, I mean, he's just not a high strikeout pitcher. He's facing a Cleveland team that has one of the lowest strikeout percentages in baseball against left-handed pitching. They're not the most productive offense overall, but not getting any sort of discount on Borucki either. He's one guy that I just really don't have interest in at all.
Yeah, same here. I would be more interested in Cleveland bats. Luplow 4,200, Carlos Santana only 43, Lindor still 4,500, oddly. Leading off against the lefty, and then Jose Ramirez at 42. So this is a pretty nice mid-tier Cleveland stack. Do you agree there?
Yeah, decent spot. Borucki, a guy that doesn't miss a lot of bats. Like I said, you get a reasonable price tag on Luplow, but you get really, really appealing price tags on Francisco Lindor. Carlos Santana's price tag came down. Ramirez is still cheap. So, yeah, I think that Cleveland, they're not going to be my favorite stack because I just don't think that they're that good of an offense. But at their price tags, I think you can do a lot. You can put a lot of pieces around them that give you a lot of upside.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's go on to – well, actually, do you have any Toronto bats you want to target against Clevinger as one-offs?
No, I have a ton of respect for Clevinger.
Me too. Boston and Tampa Bay, we've got Eduardo Rodriguez going up against Jalen Beeks. 4.5 implied total for the Red Sox, 4.1 for the Rays. Erod at 10-9 on DraftKings, Beeks at 7-7. Erod's probably a guy that's going to grade out as one of the better pitchers in raw point projection because of the park and the K matchup versus Tampa, but I don't know that he's going to be a guy that I get to at almost 11K on DraftKings with Clevinger and Garrett Cole up in the 12K range. Just really tough pricing here for Erod, but what do you see here against the Rays?
I'd be really surprised if I get to Erod at a 10-9 price tag. On other sites, he's 8K on FanDuel, which is obviously more appealing, and on Yahoo he's $46, which is also okay. You can get to him on those sites. It's a really good park, like you said, and pitching indoors or pitching in pitcher-friendly parks is at a bit more of a premium this time of the year because it does tend to be hotter and more neutral parks play as hitters parks. So all that's good for Rodriguez. And there are some strikeouts in the Tampa Bay lineup. It's just on DraftKings at 10,900. I'm not getting there, I don't think. it's an overpay. You're basically paying for his ceiling, and anything that isn't his ceiling is going to disappoint you at that price.
Yeah, you just got to be so efficient. 24.4% K rate on the season, but that's 13 and 17% less than the other two guys that you could spend up for. You look at Erod's whip, 130 compared to Clevenger, 1.05, 1.03 for Garrett Cole. So you just got to be so efficient with the strikeouts and just eating up innings for that almost 11K price tag. On FanDuel, I thought he was quite a bit more affordable. Yeah, 8K.
He's 8K there.
Yeah, so that's going to be a guy that's probably going to be in play over there. And then Yahoo, he's 46. So I think DraftKings specifically, he's going to be really tough to get. I would be surprised if he grades out as a better value of any of these 10K plus guys, but other two sites, I think he's looking pretty usable over there. Beeks, 7,700 versus the Red Sox. Beeks I think he's an okay pitcher, but this is a pretty poor matchup regardless of the park. What do you think about Beeks versus the Red Sox?
Yeah, I don't see getting to Beeks here. He's just not cheap enough for me to want to go to, even with the park. It's still a really tough matchup against Boston. I have interest in the Boston bats because they let down everyone yesterday against Wojciechowski. They only have a 4.5 implied run total here. And the thing with Boston, though, is that obviously they have one of the highest ceilings of any team on the slate anytime that they're on the slate. Beeks is a decent pitcher, but it's not like he's an ace or anything like that. I think that there's a chance that Boston goes a little bit under-owned here just because of the low implied run total and, probably middle of the road projections because of the run total. But when you just look at ceiling and upside, they're still up there with everyone. So I think that they're probably going to be a good tournament.
JD Martinez is $16 on Yahoo. On DraftKings, he is $4,100. His price hasn't come down a crazy amount on FanDuel, but just super cheap on the two pitcher sites. So he's going to be a guy that I would look to in cash games. Tough to know right now who would be in the cash lineup, but I have no issue using JD Martinez in this park against Beeks. Has Martinez been that bad? Didn't he have like a RBI double yesterday? At least he did something. I don't know.
Yeah, he had an RBI double yesterday. He has been struggling, I think, just from listening to him talk about it on games. It's not something I really look at all. But certainly not struggling enough to justify, the price tag that he's at. Over his last 10 games, he has one double and one home run. Those are his only extra base hits. But again, it's JD Martinez. Like, I really couldn't care less.
Yeah, looking at the ownership in those games, in the game logs, he's just let people down at the wrong times. It looks like when he's been chalked. So you're probably right. Boston's going to go a little bit underutilized tonight, especially because you're not getting a huge discount on Betts, Devers, and Bogarts on DraftKings, especially.
Like, I think JD will be really popular, but I think the full stack probably goes.
Yep, agreed. All right, and then any bats on Tampa that you're targeting against Erod here?
Travis d'Arnaud, if he leads off, gives you a really cheap catcher option on Yahoo and DraftKings where you need one. He has some power. Rodriguez, obviously not a bad pitcher, and the park's not great, but d'Arnaud, Tommy Pham, you have cheap power in this lineup. Pham and Garcia are inexpensive. Mike Brosseau, probably hitting third, is inexpensive as well. So I could see Tampa being a team that you kind of mini stack or grab some one-offs from just to fill out lineups because they give you power.
d'Arnaud's last 5 games, DK points, 50, 0, 0, 20. So
sounds like a perfect tournament play.
Yeah, all he does is hit home runs. His last 4 hits have been homers. 0 hits mixed in there. 0 points mixed in there from a fantasy perspective. So it's been all or nothing, the old Joey Gallo right there. But yeah, I like the d'Arnaud call, especially if he's leading off. You can play him at catcher or first on DraftKings for under 4K. Next game, we've got Oakland and Houston. Let's go Homer Bailey going up against Garrett Cole. 3.6 implied total for the A's, 5.5 for the Astros. Garrett Cole, you called him the best strikeout pitcher on the in the league, right? And 12-5 going up against Oakland. It's a tough price to get to, but this is probably going to be your guy tonight, right?
Yeah, so he's got the highest strikeout percentage of any qualified starter. It's not a great matchup for a couple of reasons. For one, Oakland as a team just doesn't strike out a lot. Against right-handed pitching this year, their active roster has struck out 21% of the time, which is tied for 21st with the Twins and the Red Sox. So, as far as strikeout upside, it's like you're facing the Twins or the Red Sox. And it's not like they're a bad offense either. They have one of the highest ISOs against right-handed pitching at 204. They have a 108 WRC plus. And then in addition to that, they will probably have 6 righties in their lineup. And while Cole is good against righties, he's good against everyone. Doesn't give up a lot, gives up less power to righties. But his strikeout percentage against righties this year is 34.1% compared to 40.8% against left-handed hitters. If you go back to the start of last season, 30.5% strikeout percentage against righties, 41% against lefties. So you're getting a suboptimal matchup in terms of the strikeout numbers of the guys in the Oakland lineup, but also in terms of the splits for Garrett Cole. So you want to just keep that in mind when you're considering paying this price tag. That being said, he still projects as the best draw point pitcher for me because he's Garrett Cole. He has over 37% strikeout percentage this season. He's at the top of basically any metric you're going to look at for qualified starters. He's one of the top pitchers. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. So I think that where I can get to him, I'm not going to shy away just because of the matchup. It's just that, in some other matchups, I would be kind of like clamoring more to get him into like as many lineups as I can.
So complete opposite of the Blake Snell situation yesterday. He had a pretty good matchup, good park, and he was underpriced. Cole, tougher matchup, a little bit overpriced compared to what we've seen these aces be priced at on DraftKings, but just the raw strikeout upside here. If he's on, he's going to be striking out everyone, probably regardless which handedness he's facing. 5 games of his last 8 with double-digit Ks. Really only one blip on the radar there with a 3 strikeout game against Pittsburgh, but that's a pretty tough K matchup as well. So he's just been absurd. Not going to grade out as like a great value, of course, for 12.5. But he's probably going to be the guy I have the most exposure to in this high-end range. 11.7 on FanDuel, $59 on Yahoo. You're going to be able to make that work pretty easily. Yeah. So
he's also like, just to put in the context how good he's been this season, if you look at all qualified starters, there's 78 of them so far this year. Cole has the highest strikeout percentage at 37.5%. The next highest is Chris Sale at 35.3, and then Scherzer at 35.2. So more than 2 points higher than those two guys. And then if you look at xFIP, Cole has the best xFIP at 2.57. Next best is Scherzer at 2.82. So really not even close in terms of strikeout percentage or xFIP. And it's not like he walks a lot of guys either. He has a 6.1% or 6.4% walk percentage. So he also leads all qualified starters with a 31.1 K minus E percentage. Really, really good.
Cole, the highest owned player right now on the slate on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is the second highest owned pitcher. Interesting name at number 2 on FanDuel and number 1 on FanDuel, number 2 on DraftKings as far as highest owned pitchers on the slate, especially when you look at his price. So we'll get there in a little bit, but makes more sense on Yahoo, the kind of ownership hierarchy for these top-end pitchers. So we will see, but nothing really holding me back from playing Cole on this slate. There are some cheaper bats, some teams that we see usually priced up that are priced sort of in this mid-tier. Maybe some teams in the next game. But what about any Astros bats against Homer Bailey here?
Yeah, I think the Astros are pretty appealing. Bailey has been decent this season, but he's not someone that I'm going to shy away from with Astros bats. Against righties, which is predominantly what he's going to be facing in the Houston lineup, he's only struck out 18.9% this season compared to 23% of lefties. He's allowed a 373 expected WOBA and a 172 expected ISO to right-handed hitters compared to 305 and 130 to lefties. So the only real lefties in the lineup for Houston are Brantley and Alvarez in the middle, and they're both really good hitters anyway. So I'm not worried about that. But at the top with Springer, Altuve, Bregman, I think that you get really good right-handed hitters. Gurriel seems to have figured out how to hit for power finally. So he's someone that tends to go a little bit overlooked in Houston stacks. But the top of the Houston order in particular, I really like.
Yeah, Gurriel's been on quite the tear lately since basically the start of July. So if he's going to start hitting like that, I mean, this lineup is as scary as any lineup in the MLB. The problem is just their pricing. I'd probably get to them like over the Red Sox, but I would imagine they have a lot more ownership than the Red Sox. Scrolling down, it looks like on the ownership projections, if this Colorado Washington game goes, that's where you're going to see a lot of people flock to. But we will see on that. Houston might come up the rankings as if that game is looking like it's going to be taken off the slate. So right now it looks like Bregman at 10% is the highest on Guy Altuve at 9%, and then everyone else below that. So maybe Houston not as popular as I thought against Bailey.
I think Houston always ends up being kind of as a full stack, not really that popular just because of their pricing. And because, you have Springer, Brantley, and Alvarez all as outfielders. So it's and Reddick is an outfielder. So they're kind of a tough team to full stack. Normally you'll get, a lot of ownership to guys like Altuve and Bregman, but as a full stack, I think they come in a little bit under-owned a lot. I think Chirinos actually really stands out for me too as, a power hitting catcher in a spot against Bailey who doesn't strike out a lot of righties and who gives up power.
I like it. Yankees and the Twins, we've got CC Sabathia going up against Martin Perez. Sabathia 8,600, Martin Perez 8,100. So a couple more guys that are looking like they're priced up, oddly priced up, especially when you consider the implied totals here. 5.7 going to the Yankees, 5.4 for the Twins. Not crazy weather here or anything. It's cooled down really across the entire U.S. 77 degrees at game time, a little bit of wind blowing out to right, so that's probably not going to help out a ton of right-handed power. But we're seeing two high implied totals. Either of the pitchers, guys you're looking at, I can't really make a case for either outside of just being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian.
Yeah, I don't see it. It's just a really tough matchup for both. It's not even like these teams give you a ton of strikeout upside to go along with the power. The Yankees against left-handed pitching this year are 22.8% strikeout percentage. Minnesota's down at 20.3%. Martin Perez has done a really good job of limiting production this season, but he's still not a high strikeout guy. Against right-handed hitters, he has a 20.1% strikeout percentage. He has held them to a 289 expected WOBA and a 127 expected ISO. But even that, I still like the Yankees here because, for one, you're getting affordable price tags. There's not a single hitter in the Yankees lineup above $5,000 on DraftKings. You're getting tons of power with guys like Judge, Sanchez, Encarnacion. LeMahieu, obviously, is just a really good hitter overall. Luke Voigt's back in the lineup. Like, top to bottom, this lineup has a ton of power. So I still think that they're good. They're good plays, even though Perez has been good. And then on the other side, Sabathia, just middle of the road starter at this point, gives up more power to righties than Perez does. Still not a total gas can. 318 expected WOBA, 175 expected ISO, but a lot of right-handed power here for the Twins as well. Garver, Polanco, Cruz, Crone, just really, really tough spots for both pitchers. So I'm much more inclined to go to the hitting.
Yeah, this game should be pretty popular on Yahoo. Looking at the Twins pricing, no one above $19. You got Kepler at 14, CJ Cron at 12, Rosario 18, Polanco expected to bat second at $11. So a lot of value at the Minnesota side, and then you've got $12 Gary Sanchez, $18 Aaron Hicks, and then Judge and LeMahieu are priced 22 and 23. But looks like this game could be pretty easy to get to on Yahoo. When the top stack tool comes out, I would think both of these teams are probably going to be teams that are undervalued just because they're not super cheap teams on DraftKings. They're not cheap on FanDuel really either, but I like getting to both of them. So I'll be pretty heavy, I would imagine, on the Twins especially, but not going to shy away from some Yankees either with Judge under 5K and then Hicks 4,600 as well. Two guys I'm really interested in. Also Gleyber Torres, dual position eligibility. He always bats seventh, but Alex loves him in the projections because he's not really a 7-hole hitter. Anything else in this game before we move on?
Nope.
Miami and the White Sox, we've got Trevor Richards going up against Ivan Nova, two guys that are getting quite a bit of attention on the two pitcher sites. 4.8 implied total for Miami, 4.9 for the White Sox. Richards at 7K on DraftKings, Nova at 4,800, just priced way down as he usually is against the Marlins. But does this implied total worry you against Nova here?
The implied total, not so much. Nova himself, like, he's just terrible. But he's 4,800 and he's facing the Marlins, so I'm not going to act like I'm not going to get some Nova here. It is a primarily right-handed lineup, which for his career has been a good thing. This year it hasn't mattered a ton. He's allowed a 381 expected WOBA and 185 expected ISO to righties, so he's just been bad against everyone. If he's going to get a ton of ownership, I could see getting to some Miami here just as a cheap stack, and then you can pay up for pitching to leverage against Nova. But $4,800 at pitcher is, you don't have to be that talented for me to roster you.
Garrett Cooper at 5K for Miami. I don't know what's going on with that price, but everyone else is 4K below. Anderson at 4K. A lot of these guys in the mid threes. So I like the call, especially for leverage or getting mini stacks against Nova, just because he's so bad. But he's also in play because of his price and him being stretched out and going up against a Marlins team that does strike out. So you're just hoping that he survives if you're getting to a lot of Nova. Right now, he is under 20%. He's actually not the highest owned pitcher right now in this sub 5K range. And I'm guessing the other guy has a lot to do with just park factor or whatever. But yeah, it's pretty tough when you get down below 5K, but it's kind of necessary on this slate, especially when we like paying up for Cole or Clevenger or Robby Ray or whoever. White Sox bats versus Trevor Richards. Are you targeting the righties here? You like righties against Richard, right?
So his strikeout numbers are better against righties. He really isn't. When he first came up, he was getting hit hard by righties, but he seems to have figured that out. When he first came up, he was kind of shying away from his changeup against them, and his changeup's the only pitch that he throws that is like a major league pitch. So it put him in a really tough spot. He's gotten better now, though. This season, he's only allowed a 155 expected ISO, 308 expected WOBA to righties, 325 and 161 to lefties. So really across the board, he's had more trouble with lefties than righties this year. Not that he's gotten hit hard by either, but strikeout numbers are much better against righties too. So I would look to, Yoan Moncada would be my favorite guy here. I think that Yolmer Sanchez at 2,800 at second base is appealing. It's a spot where, I'm going to get to Richards too because he's facing the White Sox and there's not a lot in the mid-range. But I also don't think that, it wouldn't be surprising if it goes poorly because it is a negative park shift for him. It is most likely a left-handed heavy lineup. But on the other side, it is the White Sox who have the highest strikeout percentage. They're at second now, but still 26.1% strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching. Only a 6.6% walk percentage. That's actually a pretty big deal for Richards too, and a 93 WRC plus. So really favorable matchup, just negative park shift for Richards.
Yeah, and the weather not really helping out. So it's only 75 degrees, but it looks like wind blowing out straight to right. So if there's going to be a lot of lefty bats in this White Sox lineup, that's concerning. But yeah, I think I'm going to get to a lot of things in this game, probably bats on both sides, especially the White Sox, just a decent implied total. Their highest price guy is Yoan Moncada, who I have no issue playing for 4,500. Then everyone else is 4K or below on DraftKings in the projected lineup. So just value kind of all over the place, pitching and hitting on a slate that lacks value. So yeah, it's pretty ugly, but that's just the reality of the slate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game where it has two pitchers in it that are going to be popular simply because of other elements of the slate, not because of the pitchers themselves. It's obviously that they're in really good matchups, but it's also that there's just not great options around them, and so you're going to get more ownership concentrated there. And so it does give you a chance in tournaments, especially, we talked at the top of the show about, 100K to first and a 300K prize pool on DraftKings. It's a little bit more valuable in payout structures like that, as opposed to ones on Yahoo that actually are good to play and, don't pay out 33% to first place. There's more value in those top heavy ones to going contrarian.
Yep, 100%. All right, so this game, I mean, it could easily swing the slate just based on the amount of ownership that's going to be on both sides, especially if we lose that Washington game. All right, Cincinnati and Milwaukee. We have your boy Sonny Gray going up against Chase Anderson. 4.4 implied total for the Reds, 4.7 for the Brewers. Just no respect being shown here to Sonny Gray. $9,700. Probably going to be a FanDuel day for Gray, if anything. but not quite at that 10K threshold. DraftKings trolling you a little bit there. What do you see about Gray here going up against the Brewers?
I think I'll get to Gray even on DraftKings. He's expensive, and it's not like it's a safe matchup. But Milwaukee does have the seventh highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year, 23.9%, 102 WRC plus. But one thing that really stands out is that the best hitters in Milwaukee's lineup are left-handed, with Yelich, Grandal, Moustakas, Eric Thames all being dangerous left-handed bats. But against lefties this year, Gray struck out 31.2%, 275 expected WOBA, 138 expected ISO. He's been really, really good against them. So, I think that is good to see at least. It's not like I'm happy that he gets to face Yelich and Grandal and Moustakas, but he at least has put up really good numbers against lefties this year. There are strikeouts in this lineup, and most importantly, there's just a price jump from him to Robby Ray. I have Gray projected for more points than Eduardo Rodriguez. I have Ray projected for more points, but he's almost $2,000 more expensive, and there's not really anyone below Sonny Gray in the mid-range that I think offers the same upside. You're talking about a pitcher that has the fourth highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 28.6%, only trailing Clevenger, Cole, and Ray. So 3.36 xFIP, also really, really good, third best on the slate. Just a really good pitcher, I think, and maybe the price tag scares some people away, but I think I'll still be getting there a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good case for him. He's overpriced, but a lot of guys overpriced. When we get to Robby Ray, I mean, 11-4 for Ray, and he's popular, and Gray's really not going to be popular, but you don't often see him at this price. Like, he's been priced way down because he had some struggles in the beginning of the season, but he's just been really, really solid. He just is coming off a couple starts ago where he had 12 Ks against the same Brewers team. So more of a narrative thing there, but he's shown he can do it, and especially versus lefties. You mentioned the fourth highest K rate as well on the slate. So just under 10K doesn't seem too crazy here for some Sonny Gray. So I'm hoping I get there quite a bit. It'll depend on what Alex has him projected at, but I'm hoping he has a pretty decent number here, at least relative to Gray, because I would like to get that discount, $1,700 on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, Gray is $8,600. That's, of course, going to be in play. Yahoo, he is at just $40. Man, would he be... I guess it's tough because it's only 10 lineups on Yahoo, but if you were making like 100 lineups on Yahoo somehow, would Gray be your highest owned guy over there?
Probably not, because Robby Ray is only 44, and I do have Ray projected better than Gray.
Okay. Fair enough. Any bats you want to talk about, or Chase Anderson for 7,200?
I mean, it's a favorable hitter's park. Anderson's price tag is okay. Like, I don't hate if I get some Chase Anderson, but I'm most interested in Suarez and Yasiel Puig, two big-time right-handed power bats against Anderson, who really struggles with right-handed power. So I think that, that's pretty interesting, those two in particular.
All right. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything to add outside of the Reds being pretty cheap on Yahoo. Winker, 14, Votto, 13, Suarez under 20. Puig's the only one that's expensive on Yahoo, but Derek Dietrich, forever near mid-salary on Yahoo at just $8. He's questionable, not sure if he's going to be in, but if he's not, I'm assuming Van Meter is also pretty cheap on Yahoo as well. And then, did you mention any bats against Gray?
No, more of a full stack situation for me. It is a good park. The weather's not the best for hitters, but it's a talented lineup in a good park. So, if you get some full Milwaukee stacks, I think that makes sense. But there's no one that really stands out as like a super appealing option, because for one, a lot of them are still expensive, and two, Gray, is when he's on, it's not like it's a good matchup for anyone. And then you look for right-handed power, and basically you have Keston here at 5,400. So it's tough to really love anyone individually.
Orioles and the Diamondbacks, we've got a 3.5 implied total for Baltimore, 5.6 for Arizona. That's one of the higher ones on the entire slate. Brooks and Robby Ray going here. 11-4 Robby Ray. You mentioned that you've got some interest in Gray because of Ray's price on DraftKings especially. Let's just talk about the matchup here, like raw points-wise. versus Baltimore. Do you think this is a really awesome matchup for Robby Ray?
Yeah, I have Ray projected as the second highest raw scorer on the slate behind Garrett Cole, and not that far behind Cole. So I do think I'll get to Ray even at his DraftKings price tag, but on Yahoo he really stands out at 44. On FanDuel he is 9,600, which again is perfectly fine. Baltimore has a 26.1% strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching this season. That's second only to Texas. For comparison, that's the exact same strikeout percentage that the White Sox roster has against right-handed pitching. 87 WRC plus, 304 WOBA for the Orioles. It's a right-handed heavy lineup, but that doesn't really matter for Robby Ray. He struck out 30.7% of righties this year. He has allowed a 188 expected ISO, but it's not like the Orioles have a lot of right-handed power. It's also the roof is closed, which benefits the pitching as well. So I just think it's a really good spot for Ray. You're really paying for the matchup on DraftKings, but because of what they did with their pitcher pricing, you're not overpaying in context of the slate. So he's fine there, and then on the other sites, he just really jumps out.
Yeah, you got to play someone, and if it's not going to be Garrett Cole, depending on what projection system you're using, it might be Ray. So everyone priced up, or almost everyone. Ray is no exception here, but you're paying for the strikeout upside, you're paying for the matchup. So it does kind of make sense on this slate. Ray is the second highest owned pitcher right now on DraftKings. He is the highest owned pitcher on FanDuel. If you are leveraging against him, would you like to go full stack style here or more one-offs with guys like Mancini and maybe Jonathan VR?
Yeah, probably more mini stacks. Mancini, Nunez, VR are the three that are the most appealing. Anzer Alberto, if he leads off and is really cheap, is okay. Severino gives you a cheap catcher option, but Mancini, Nunez have power. VR has some power and speed. So I think those are the three high upside guys here.
And then talk about Aaron Brooks versus the Diamondbacks bats. Once again, 5.6 implied total for Arizona here. Are they a premier stack on the slate?
Yeah, the only thing really working against them is that the roof is closed, but Brooks just not a good pitcher. Since last season, he has allowed a 345 expected WOBA and 199 expected ISO to righties. Then against lefties, he's just been really bad. 368 expected WOBA, 233 expected ISO. Doesn't get strikeouts against either side. 19% against righties, 18.5 to lefties. And you do get some power in this lineup. Kettle Marte's really come through this year. Escobar has power. Walker has power. Jones has some pop. So does Jake Lamb. And then even for a shortstop and a catcher, Nick Ahmed and Carson Kelly have enough power that they're reasonable plays against Aaron Brooks and a bad Baltimore bullpen. So, it's not the best park for hitters now that they have the humidor and the roof is closed, but just tons of upside here against a pitcher in Brooks who is not very good and probably doesn't go super deep into the game, even if he is pitching well. And then an Orioles bullpen that, leaves a lot to be desired.
I never get to the Diamondbacks, and seeing this total worries me. But their ownership, only two guys above 5% right now in this entire game for hitters. So
yeah. It's like they're constantly overpriced, I think, relative to other teams. Like you look at the Diamondbacks and say, okay, it's a good matchup. They're facing Aaron Brooks, all the things I just said. But you look at their pricing, and they're more expensive than the Yankees. They're more expensive than, or similarly priced, I guess, to the Astros. So it's like they're always really tough to get to when you sit and look at it from a standpoint of do I want to pay $5,300 for Eduardo Escobar, or do I want to pay $5,000 for Alex Bregman?
Right.
Or $4,800 for Christian Walker, or $4,500 for Luke. From that standpoint, I think it just kind of always keeps their ownership.
Yeah, and it's not like they've been incredible versus really either hand, but versus righties, they don't strike out that much, but a 172 ISO, that's fine. A 91 WRC plus, that's obviously below average. I don't know, man. For whatever reason, I just never get to them in these good spots. So maybe that changes today with the increased implied total and Brooks on the mound, but I'm hoping I don't end up fading a low-owned team with a 5.6 implied total here. Chicago Cubs and San Francisco Giants, we've got Alec Mills going up against Sean Anderson, 4.4 runs to the Cubs, 4.2 to the Giants. What sticks out to you in this game? Sean Anderson, $4,300 on DraftKings. but he is 22% ownership right now. Do you have any interest in that? Do you think Anderson is any good? And if you don't think he's good, can he survive this matchup against the Cubs?
I don't think he's good. I do think that he's 4,300 and pitching in San Francisco. That ownership, though, I mean, I have him projected as the best or the highest scorer out of the really cheap guys, but it's not like I have him at an actual like really high projection or anything. I have him around like 11 points. He struck out 11% of left-handed hitters this year. He's facing an above-average Cubs offense that's full of left-handed hitters, and at least as of right now, we're projecting him for 20% ownership. If you don't roster Sean Anderson, you got pretty unlucky if he puts up a score that, like in raw points, that you actually have to have. The most likely outcome is that he scores. He's a good point per dollar play, and he doesn't help you win a tournament. It's just other than the bats that he gets you. It's unlikely that he goes out there and gets like 20 plus points. So if he does stay projected, this highly in ownership, I would expect that I come in underweight on him and just kind of end up getting overweight on other pitchers around him that are similarly bad.
Yeah. I mean, Samson, about half the ownership right now. None of these guys are really any good. Fetty, if that game goes, and he's at 2% compared to 20+% of Sean Anderson, I think that's going to be a spot where I pivot to quite a bit. Even if you're getting 10% of Fetty and you're just going under on Anderson, I think that's kind of worth it because these guys are all basically the same. I understand why Anderson is getting ownership right now just because he's got the lowest implied total of all these guys against him, 4.4. It's a great park, all that. But it's not like it's a perfect K matchup, and it's not like he's a good pitcher or anything, and this is just a clear misprice or anything like that. So he's just getting played because it's just a price play, and if everyone's going to gravitate towards one guy or a couple guys, I'm going to try to get different with guys in the same price range rather than taking bats I don't want to take.
He's like the perfect example of the kind of guy where there is a pretty stark difference, I think, between if you're an MME player or if you're someone that is hand building some lineups to take a shot in large field tournaments. Like if you're hand building, 5 lineups or whatever and trying to take down 100K, there's really no reason for you to be playing Sean Anderson. If you're an MME guy, you absolutely should have exposure to Sean Anderson just because you should have exposure across a lot of these cheap guys because it's going to give you probably the highest upside roster construction.
Yep, 100% agree. Now, Alec Mills on the other side, not quite as cheap, 6,900 here for Mills. He threw 81 pitches in his last start, so he is pretty stretched out. Is he a guy you would be looking at? San Francisco, again, not a perfect strikeout matchup either, but in this same good park and not getting nearly the ownership of some of these other guys in this range. He's only at 5% right now. What do you see with Mills here versus the Giants? Oh no, do we lose Adam? I think we might have lost Adam. Let's see here. I think we're still on. Anyways, we'll see if Adam comes back here. I will try to pull him up. All right, we'll do that later. Let's start this. All right, let's see if we can get Adam back here so we can close out these last couple of games. All right, I think you're back, Adam. Was that you or me?
It was me. It's just my connection froze.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh, let's fix that. All right, so Alec Mills. That's going to be a fun listen for people on the podcast. Alec Mills, 6,900 going up against the Giants. What do you see there?
Yeah, not really a spot that I think I'll get to. It's obviously a favorable park. You could, I guess, use him as a pivot to Trevor Williams, who's going to get a lot of ownership in that price range. And it's a favorable matchup, but not a high strikeout guy. At AAA this year, 22.7% strikeout percentage, 5.34 FIP. At AAA last year, 20.3% strikeout percentage, 4.19 FIP. Just kind of a guy. If he was cheaper, I would certainly have interest, but at 6,900, I don't really see getting there all that often.
I think I'm going to get to some Mills. I hope I do at least. If he's just going to go completely overlooked, I'll just take the guy that's getting less ownership than some of these cheaper guys, but obviously you'd have to get to cheaper stacks if you're going with like a Ray Mills combo or Mills with Garrett Cole or Clevenger or something like that. So that'll be the only difficulty, is finding a cheaper stack that I'm comfortable with.
I think I'd rather take Chase Anderson than Mills.
Okay, fair enough. Cubs bats, you like them as leverage? Or kind of who's your favorite leverage stack against these cheap guys? So Marlins against Nova, Cubs against the Giants, and then we'll get to the Mariners against Sampson. But do you have a favorite leverage stack, like full stack, that you're targeting against one of these cheap guys?
Probably the Cubs, just based on talent. Obviously, the park is as bad as it gets, but there are a couple of things that make that a little bit less scary. For one, the weather across the board is, like we've said in several games, the weather's broke. It's not 95 degrees everywhere anymore. Pretty much all of these games have temperatures in the mid 70s. So you don't have a lot of, launching pad hitter conditions on this slate. You also have a lot of games in pitcher-friendly parks. So you have a game in Pittsburgh, you have a game in Tampa, you have a game in Houston with the roof closed. So Arizona with the roof closed, Seattle. So there's no Coors, there's no Cincinnati game, there's no real hot weather games. So the effect of hitting in San Francisco relative to the rest of the slate isn't quite as bad as it is on those days. And the Cubs are just a good offense against a pitcher in Anderson who's really not good. So I understand the park is bad, but if he's going to get 22% ownership, I think that getting to the Cubs makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, man, it's just tough to pay for Rizzo at 51. You're not getting a big discount on Bryant, but they're like the classic anti-optimizer play, and you get a ton of leverage if Anderson's going to continue to be this chalky. So I really like the Cubs. I don't know that I'm going to get to full stacks of them, but I'm certainly going to try to when I'm filtering out my lineups to try to get leverage off of a bad pitcher who's going to be popular. Last game of the night. We've got the Rangers and the Mariners. Adrian Sampson going up against Marco Gonzales. 5 implied total for Texas. 5.1 for the Mariners. Sampson at 4,100. Same thing as Anderson?
Yep.
All right, that's basically it. So he's not a good pitcher, but he's getting played because of the nature of the slate. Right now, he's at 12% compared to Anderson's 22, Nova's 17. We'll see if these guys kind of all get bunched together and they're all in the mid-teens, or if one emerges as chalk. If one emerges as chalk, it's going to be I'll probably just flip it on its head. Like if there's a clear, hierarchy of who's going the most owned and stuff. I don't know. I don't really have anything meaningful to say about Sampson outside of him being 40, just crazy cheap on a slate where you need cheap pitchers. Maybe Gonzales is more interesting to talk about. Is he someone you're targeting against Texas?
I was kind of surprised how much ownership we have Gonzales projected for. We have him at 13% right now. 7,900 isn't a price tag that I really like paying for Marco Gonzales. He's just not a high strikeout pitcher. For the season, he has struck out 16.7% of hitters with a 5.27 xFIP. That's not really someone I like paying $8K for. The only thing really working for him here is that, in addition, he's at home in Seattle, which is favorable. The Rangers do have the highest strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching this season, 27%. They have an 84 WRC plus. Basically, he's facing the Orioles with a little bit more power. But it's a favorable matchup. I just don't think that roster construction-wise, I'm going to end up getting to him at that price point all that much. As opposed to just going cheaper. Yeah,
I agree on the roster construction point, because it's like, do you really want to go with like Gray Gonzalez pairings? Like if I'm going to Sonny Gray, it's just to save money off of Cole and those guys, and he'd be my clear SP1 rather than going double mid range for two guys that don't project out very well as values. So I just don't know how much Gonzalez I'm going to get to, despite it being a good strikeout matchup. He just hasn't been that great. He's had some good starts recently, but it's not like a guy you're super excited to play, even against Texas, and you see the high implied total against. It's almost 80 degrees in Seattle. So while it's cooled down basically everywhere else, kind of warm in Seattle, where it's usually one of the cooler spots on the slate. So bats here, and then we will get out of here.
Domingo Santana stands out the most. Sampson really struggles with right-handed power in particular. There's not much of that at all in the Seattle lineup, but Domingo Santana is the exception. So he really stands out to me. Joey Gallo on the other side, I expect to have, virtually no ownership because of the lefty-lefty matchup. But Gonzales, since the start of last season, only has a 13.7% strikeout percentage against lefties with a 182 expected ISO compared to 20.7% against righties with a 143 expected ISO. So he gives up more power to lefties and strikes out fewer lefties. Joey Gallo is one of the best hitters on the Rangers against left-handed pitching, despite being left-handed, and he's affordable with obviously tons of power. So Gallo and Santana.
All right, perfect. I agree with that. I always love me some low-owned Joey Gallo, especially in lefty-lefty spots where, like, if he hits the ball, if he squares one up, it's going out against whoever in whatever park. It doesn't really matter. So, especially if Gonzales is going to get ownership, love me some low-owned Texas bats, especially Gallo on the late night hammer. If you want to play the night slate or whatever as well, I'm sure Gonzales is going to be chalky there. We've got night slate ownership projections and all that, which I would suggest using because night slates can be softer. It's a lot of people chasing. It's a lot of people tilt entering. I've been playing a lot more night slates without these other sports going on, just trying to grind as much as possible. All right, promo code MLB Strategy gives you 50% off your first month of any Osmo.com premium package. I would suggest using that. You get access to articles from Osmo himself, premium articles, projections, rankings, ownership for all slates express afternoon. It doesn't really matter. We've got ownership for basically every slate that goes down. You would get articles and videos from Adam, Laffy, the deep dive, premium Slack, of course, which is always got it going on there. What do you got going on for the rest of the day, Adam? Deeper dive?
Yeah, deeper dive at 5, I think. Yeah, deeper dive at 5 with Laffy and Alex. Laffy will have the article out around 2.
Cool.
Behind the paywall.
Yep, that is the deep dive article where Laffy breaks down the pitching. Adam does that article Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I believe. Laffy Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So a very comprehensive article of the slate. Keep an eye out for that Washington game to see what's going on with the weather. I don't think we're going to have too many other concerning spots. Thanks for watching. Thanks for Yahoo for sponsoring the show. Get in that rake-free tournament. Only about 75 spots left. So by the time you're listening to this, it's probably going to be filled. Good luck tonight, guys, and we will catch you later.